friends. I'm Kim Catron.
And I'm Teague.
And we wanted to do a quick little Tuesday talkback after MadameNoire's web series just came out. It premiered this Monday, Ask a Black Man.
Yeah, so the first episode was about manhood and talking about what that looks like and how it's cultivated and how it's affected us as men. Now, the second episode, which was the bonus episode, was about street harassment, which I think has gotten the most attention out of the two videos. So what we want to do is do talkbacks to these videos.
I think that the street harassment video got really heated because there were some really intense things that were shared and said. Do we want to get into that one first and get started there, or do we want to start at the first video, the premiere?
Let's just get into the street harassment video, because I think that's
because I have so many things to say,
and I want you to say all of the things.
I'm so upset.
So I want you to say all of the things. Yes, there was a lot of things said in that video, and it seemed like I had one perspective, and then there was a whole other perspective, right? But then again, there were places where we did meet and that we did agree on a little bit. Did you not see that?
Yeah, I think that there were. I could see that there were some other guys who were understanding what you were saying, but I think one of the things that feels so frustrating about watching those things is, how many women in their life have had to have that conversation before a little tiny light bulb went off when you started talking, and it still wasn't that big of a light bulb for most of them.
Yeah, I think one of the most troubling comments was this guy Zach here, who said he was a hunter and has to hunt, and women aren't prey. Right? What did you say earlier about that this morning?
Gosh, yeah. So he said, as a hunter, I gotta hunt. And, I am not a gazelle. I am not a little soft deer in the forest. I am a human being and an individual. And if we're thinking about relationships between men and women as being, possibly partnered relationships, you're not looking for a woman to massacre and maul into a giant bloody mass on the ground.
Right.
When you are seeking out a woman in the street
on the ground,
and you want to talk to her, it's because you want to have a conversation with her and you want to see if you can possibly have a relationship. I think that this idea that I think is often asserted with both women and with land is that we need to be conquered. Right. We need to be overwhelmed.
Which is just silly, because women aren't prey. You're peers and community members and, wives and sisters and friends and human beings, and should be treated like such. I think what happens a lot, though, I think that a lot of times a lot of guys do is look at masculinity and femininity, or men and women, as two things that are so oppositional. Right. That's why he come up with this idea, this hunter and hunted metaphor, which doesn't work. Constantly looking at masculinity and femininity and men and women as things that are completely oppositional, doesn't work. We have to think about these things that have to work together, working together and seeing how we can respect each other and be better for each other. And it's just the level of entitlement.
For sure, because that's not even oppositional. That is subordinate.
Yeah.
A hunted and the hunter and the hunted. That is a relationship of very clear dominance.
And subordination is something different than we talk about submission, a dominant and submissive relationship.
Exactly.
Which is cute.
Exactly. And I wanted to get into that and be I don't want to be shady to women who like the attention that they get in the street. I don't want to be shady to women who like that kind of aggressive, really dominant kind of masculinity. Because I think that whatever you like, whatever kind of masculinity, whatever kind of dynamic you like, if you consent to it, then that's amazing. You say this all the time. If you like it, I love it.
Right.
That's awesome.
Right.
However,
but even for women who are into that, who want to be dominated, who want to be submissive, that it's when it's consensual, it's one thing. But that type of woman, at the same time, when she's walking down the street, doesn't mean she wants to be dominated by these guys, because it turns into violence. And this is the thing, when we were talking about how, if one guy gives a woman a compliment, okay, but then when it happens, when it's every 5 feet someone's giving her a comment, it becomes a system of harassment, and it's emblematic of this culture, this rape culture that we're in, right? So there's a lot. There was a lot happening there that I wish I had more time to unpack.
You definitely tried, because I feel like you were great at trying to express that, the way that I dress is for me first and for you second. And I think even one of the things that you touched on for me remains to be problematic, that even when I say that I'm married, that it isn't enough of a deterrent. But the fact is that when people are responding to the fact that I'm married, it's not because they respect my autonomy, it's because they respect your property.
Exactly.
And that for me is even worse, because
Yeah.
this is really, my relationship with you as a man is really the first time I've been even given any sort of capacity to deflect that kind of harassment, because as a queer woman who's predominantly been in relationships with women, with genderqueer people, that no, when it comes attached to that sort of person and that kind of relationship, means less than nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
It's a challenge, if anything.
Now they want to chase you. They see you down the street with a genderqueer person, or they see you in the street with a woman, and now it becomes a conquest.
Exactly. Now it's a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is a big part of that socialized problem of the way that men are regarded to think about women as a challenge. This is sort of, for me, it goes back to what I talk about a lot, which is, you got to treat people the way that they want to be treated.
Right.
These stereotypes that you're learning about women are not created by women.
It doesn't matter if you were raised by a whole tribunal of women. You know what I mean? You get to know a person by asking about every woman is different, and to make these blanketed statements that all women are this or all women are that, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. You know?
Like, the hunted feel afraid.
Yeah.
It is not an exciting place to be, but I actually don't think it was a bad metaphor. I think it was an accurate metaphor that was terrifying. And I think it was the accuracy for me that was so terrifying, because that is what it feels like.
That's so rapey.
I feel like I'm being hunted. I do feel that genuine kind of experience when I'm walking, that I need to be trying to get somewhere as quickly as possible, so as to escape. Like, I always talk about all of these tools that I have to come up with, whether it's really big headphones or a really big backpack, or never to make eye contact with anyone. Like, planning out how to live a life so that you're not going to be hunted is a really terrifying thing. And I think that it's so frustrating, because men are surrounded by women.
Constantly.
We're surrounded by women, whatever gender you are. There are women all
everywhere
over the world who are all talking about their different experiences, and at no time did you ever think that it would be appropriate to consider what women are feeling,
right? Or even,
what
this conversation really tells. Now, this is what I found. I found that, particularly on the website, we find out I was transgender, then me being trans negates everything that I said, right? Because some kind of, one person said, oh, well, since, misgender me, she is really a woman pretending to be a man, or some silly shit like that. But here's the thing: my life experience influences who I am as a man. All of our life experiences should influence who we are as people. All of our lived experiences, right? And we should engage in that, and engage in it in a really active way, try to deconstruct it, try to understand it. You know what I'm saying? So all of these men, all of their life experiences has also influenced them, and I think it's important for not just trans people, for all people, to really look back on their life and think about how it manifests into who they are, and also men need to have conversations with women. And I think that's the other thing. Yeah, I'm trans, but the thing is that I've had tons of conversations with women. I talk to women. I ask them about how they feel. I want to know. I've had these conversations, and that's where it's born out of. It's not that street harassment really wasn't a part of my lived experience. Not really, but I understand what it feels like. I sympathize with my wife, and she calls me and tells me she's scared because she's waiting on a bus, and this guy is looking at her and won't stop looking at her. What the fuck is that to laugh at? Why should I be like, oh, take it as a compliment because the man thinks you're cute? It's not. And me being trans it shouldn't make me more sympathetic. Maybe it does, but it shouldn't. I think as men who partner with women and who love women, then you have an obligation, because you have privilege in this world, right? You have an obligation to prioritize her emotional needs and her protection first before your intention, I think.
Absolutely. And some of the things that he was saying, and I feel like a lot of it, one of the other guys kind of made it seem like it's about what I wear. He said, well, my partner doesn't have these problems. When people come up to her, it's very respectful, and they're always saying queen this. And that kind of victim blaming is really, really, really dangerous, and is really violent for a couple of reasons. The very first time I was sexually violated, I was 6 years old, and that continued when I was 8, and when I was 9, and when I was 10. When I was 12, on the bus with my mother, I had a grown adult man come up to her and offer to buy me from her. At 13 years old, I was sitting on the plane beside a man who was going to Barbados, who was 31, and I remember this because his age was my age reversed. And he offered to make me his child bride. He was like, you know how many times age ain't nothing but a number was quoted to me over the course of my teenhood? That over and over and over again, no matter what I wore, no matter what I was wearing, baggy pants, I had long hair, I had short hair, I had a shaved head, I was 180 pounds, I was 110 pounds. You know, I really have tried a number of different ways of expressing myself in the world, and regardless of what I'm wearing, what I'm doing, who I'm with, where I am, whether I was a child, whether I was in the house or out of the house, whether I'm an adult or not, none of those things have ever stopped or saved me from being assaulted. And he also went on to say, you know, you got to just give a stern, like, you know, you got to be a little rude or whatever.
They do that, and then you get cussed out.
I have had adult men come up to me and slap me clean across the face.
That's wild.
You know, I have been standing on the bus. Remember once I was helping an older woman get off the bus, and this man who was sitting at the front of the streetcar, he reached his hand up my skirt as I was helping her off the bus. You know, and I was like, I'm not even thinking about you at all. I'm genuinely, I couldn't stop to say anything to cuss him out because I'm genuinely trying to help an older woman. And if I would have let go of her, she would have fallen. And he took that as an opportunity to reach his hand up my dress. And all of these things are my fault. I need to speak better. I need to speak louder. I need to be sterner. I need to be quieter. I need to be all of these things. And that's the thing. Women are doing that. We're trying all of those different things, and none of those things are still working.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know, particularly trans women. I know so many trans women who don't come out of their house. You know, at a certain time, like some of them don't come outside during the day because they don't want to be harassed. You know what I mean? Because they're street involved or whatever. But they don't come outside at night just so during the day just because they don't want to be harassed. And then the story that you're telling right now is something that was shared on the thread on the MadameNoire website when women were talking about being violently harassed.
Yeah.
You know, and
one woman talked about getting murdered. A beautiful woman who refused a guy who got murdered, shot as a result of that.
My boy was telling me how he was out with two of his girlfriends. And these guys tried to holler at them, and they politely said no thank you, and then started calling all kinds of bitches and followed them. He had to go pop the trunk. Like, you know, like it doesn't. He is also a trans man who was like, yo, what is up with these guys who act like when a woman, you know, rejects them, that it's the end of the world. I understand this, that the #1 cause of death for black women between the ages of 15 to 24 is domestic violence. They are getting killed by us, by the people who are supposed to protect them in their own homes. And it's because of our lack of emotional maturity. It's because of this entitlement that we think we have with women. It's because we keep subjugating our women and try to treat them as if they are...
and aren't willing to be responsible and keep being like, it's because of what you're wearing or what you're doing or what you were drinking or how you were flirting. Like, no one is willing. I'm like, it's so interesting for me that men continue to perpetuate this idea that they're responsible for all of the world and women can't do anything, but then we're not we're responsible for all their behavior.
And you know what happens though, I think, is that manhood and masculinity isn't something that is ever really questioned a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Whenever there's something, you know,
that's privilege.
That's privilege, right? And masculinity and manhood is never questioned. Always question femininity. Always question women. Well, they're hysterical, or they're mostly unstable, or they're too emotional, or you know how women are, or she took so long getting dressed, or she had her titties out. Like everything is it's always an investigation and interrogation of womanhood and femininity, but we never interrogate masculinity and manhood, which we need to, because there is an inherent problem with masculinity and how violent it is. Not saying that men are wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a man. I love being a man. I love being masculine. But again, I think me being transgender, I have deliberately created a space to interrogate masculinity, to understand the tropes of masculinity that I wanted to engage in and the ones that I didn't, right? However, hold it. Sorry. Technical timeout. However, at the same time, I think that this is something that all men should do. We should all think about what our privilege looks like. We should think about the inherent problems with masculinity. And at the same time, even though these things are similar and definitely not the same, but white folks, there is a problem with whiteness, right? There's an inherent violence that's associated with whiteness, and white folks need to interrogate that and try to step outside of that. Like, and these are things that are very, very, very difficult to do. No doubt about it. But I think it's integral. But the
absence of that is literally resulting in murder and rape and genocide.
Exactly. So do the hard work, kids.
Exactly. It's like it's being absorbed on our bodies anyways. And and I think that very much what you were saying. Well, one, like that's what privilege is. Privilege is remaining exempt from perpetuating social inequity. We never hear about the white crime rate. We always hear about the black crime rate, as though that is the only crime rate. Considering how much of a minority the population is, how could such a small amount of people be causing all this social unrest?
All of it.
It's really that is part of how privilege plays out. But for me, I think what you were saying before, as a trans man, you actually have intentionally investigated the kind of masculinity that you are moving into. And I think that it was so frustrating to see all of those people delegitimizing your experience and your place as a man, because this you know, I often ask when I do workshops with other men around sexism, you know, I will ask, like, where did you learn how to be a man, right? Like, these experiences of gender are not things that you're born into as like a little baby. You don't have like a little program inside of you. People over time teach you about what that is. And the thing is that most cis men have never thought about it, have never actually taken the time to think about who taught them these things. Where did they get good blueprints from and bad blueprints from? What are the things that you really want to make sure are part of the person that you are, and what are some things you want to disregard? And the thing is that most cis men didn't have any consent about when they got taught about how to be a man or who was teaching them. And that's the thing, is that you as a trans man and trans men in general, it is this incredible opportunity to actively, intentionally think about what kind of masculinity you want to choose for yourself, what kind of masculinity you want to celebrate in the world.
And disrupt the cycle of misogyny and violence, which I think is really important. And I think that that's, for me, that's a huge point of my masculinity. It's a huge part of being a man, is to be a part of that.
I think the thing is that many different people come to masculinity in a different way.
Absolutely.
And many different people come to their awakening and their experiences in a different way. And I think that one of the things I love about watching Ask a Black Man is the fact that I'm getting to hear diverse perspectives of different kinds of masculinity. Older black men, younger black men, cis men, trans men. And I think that those perspectives for me are really important. And I think it's telling that the only trans male perspective is the one that basically women are all siding with. I think it's telling that, like, the trans man on the panel is the one that is teaching all of these men really about what respectable masculinity could look like. And I'm like, I don't understand why another person would want to delegitimize your perspectives, recognizing that it is really the most supportive voice out of the whole group.
I appreciate you. Thank you, baby.
I love you.
Thanks.
I can't wait for the next episode.
Yeah, me neither. I can't wait for the next episode. Thank y'all so much for listening to our Tuesday Talkback. And we will be back again next Tuesday with the Talkback of episode 2 of Ask a Black Man on MadameNoire.com. Peace out. Thank you for watching this episode of Ask a Black Man. For a candid discussion on street harassment, please subscribe to Madame Noire's YouTube channel.